you have to then think and ask, what are the technocrats saying? And that's why, for me personally, I love numbers. Numbers will not lie. You know, they used to say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and a picture doesn't lie, but the picture met social media and the pictures start lying now. But the issue now is numbers don't lie. If, for instance, I'm saying that we need a loan of this amount of money to run this, there are statistical methods, you know, that we can use, a mathematical method that we can use to predict the effect of this decision I'm about to take. This is how capital markets and hedge funds, you know, predict and invest their investors' money. If they didn't have some form of, they don't have a crystal ball, you know, into what tomorrow would be and what the markets will be, because political tensions, all of these things affect what would happen to the capital markets. But if you're a hedge fund manager, you say, okay, you say to investors, give me your money. So they give you 10, 20 billion naira or $20 billion as the case may be. And I promise you a so and so percentage of refund. The reason I'm doing that is because I have statisticians. You know, I have data analysts, I have AI, I have things in which I have crunched the numbers, and the numbers have run ahead and they've told me at this point in time with these and these and these parameters, this is what might likely, there's a 90% chance of it happening, there's a leak likelihood of it happening, and these are the risk, and this is how you will manage the risk. Are we doing that?
Now let's begin this conversation taking our quote first from Martin Luther King, who is an American Baptist minister and activist, who was one of the most prominent leaders in the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination on April 4th, 1968. He once said, "All progress is precarious, and the solution of one problem brings us face to face with another problem." Okay, our next one is from Mark Twain, who was an American writer, humorist, entrepreneur, publisher, lecturer, and plus more. Everybody loved Mark Twain. Anyway, he once said, "Politicians and diapers must be changed often and for the same reason." Like I said, we all love Mark Twain, especially with regards to his famous quotes. Okay, we'll move to the next one. Theodore Roosevelt, who is an American politician, statesman, and soldier, once said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick. You will go far." Okay, great. My next one is from J.K. Galbraith, who is a Canadian-American economist, diplomat, public officer, and intellectual. He once said, "Nothing so weakens a government as inflation." Absolutely spot on. Okay, my next one is from Hector Hu Munro, who is better known by his pen name as Saki. British writer once said, "All decent people live beyond their incomes, and those who aren't respectable live beyond other people's incomes. A few gifted individuals manage to do both." Whoa. Last quote for today is from Herbert Hoover, an American politician who served as the 31st president, of the United States from 1929 to 1933, once said, "Blessed are the young, for they shall inherit the nation's debt." That's deep. Warm greetings and welcome to the conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here, the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Oji. Now let's see how these quotes relate to what we will be discussing today. As we all know that the economic experts have predicted positive economic growth for Nigeria as business activities increase in the second half of 2023. Lauye Jaiye-Olaho is the chief executive officer of Nigeria Economic Summit Group, said, end quote, "The private sector performance is notably responding favorably to the current policy posture of the new government amid all of the challenges." He said that the government's foreign market liberalization policy and fuel subsidy removal shocks are expected to push up the country's inflationary pressure. He further stated, unquote, hence there is likelihood for stronger than expected economic growth in the remaining part of 2023 as firms, new orders, output growth rates and inventory activities increase. Also, Dr. Ken Opara, who is CIBN president, said economic activities would increase in the second half of 2023. Now, you recall that KAFTAN TV recently reported that July inflationary pressure or figures increased to 24.8% according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Now, these plus more are what we will be discussing on the show today. Forecasts are saying that the numbers keep going up, but Nigerians were doing good. And yet, in the international world, they keep saying that fuel subsidy is gone. That's good for you. What is the real Nigerian on the streets? What are they facing? That woman selling pepper beside you, the one who has to use I pass my neighbor generator to barb hair. What are they facing, regardless of the numbers and what the forecast or the speculators are saying? My guest on the show today is Kutu Ameji, who is a finance and administration expert. Kutu Ameji is a speaker and futurist, and that's a futurist is someone who studies and predicts the future, especially on the basis of current trends, which demands a keen interpretation of numbers and behavioral trends. Kutu Ameji is also an author whose work history, with diplomatic missions in the areas of administration and finance spurs. You want to meet my guest, I guess. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this conversation with Kutu Ameji. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now let's go straight to, like they say, let's get down to business, especially talking about Nigeria's matter. My guest on the show today is Kutu Ameji. She is finance and administration expert. Great to have you on the show today, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm very, very honored to have been invited. Thank you.
You're welcome. Likewise. All right, now let's go straight to our conversation for today.
Yes.
While reading your profile, taking a cue from your work history and diplomatic missions, I understand that a good slice of your work experience revolves around annual budgeting, budget planning and all.
Yes.
So now let's come back to Nigeria. Let's take Nigeria's situation, for example, and then we'll talk about the inflation rates. As we've seen currently that Nigeria's accelerated rate for 6 months to 24.08% in July 2023. That's the forecast, which is the highest since September 2005 compared to forecast of 23%. Now, how best would you advise the current finance, or how best would you advise the budget office in that regard, saying that the numbers keep flying around, they're here, there, and everywhere, even beating speculations?
Yes, I would first start with saying that it's very easy to sit somewhere or be out in the streets and speculate or advise someone that's in the seat or in the minister's position on how best to do their job. There's always that observer advantage when you're not the one in the seat. You know, you're not the one facing, you know, you don't have all the facts, you're not facing the fire, you don't have that level of accountability. So there's a certain level, it's almost like a spectator in the football stadium. They have he should have done that and should have scored better, and if he had come that way. Yes, exactly. And they have that advantage, they have that privilege, they have that luxury because they're sitting at a vantage point that's not the field. They're not the one in the sweat of it. So I would first of all just point that out, that we're not saying this is how to do it because we have the observer advantage. Having said that, drawing from experience in budget planning and salary, just budget planning overall, what Nigeria would need is different from what an enterprise or say a small firm or a multinational would need, because when you're planning budgets, you have to look at the at the need at hand. You have to look at, what am I planning the budget for a small household, a small firm? Am I planning the budget for a nation? Am I planning the budget for maybe a regional body or a multinational? In this case, if you're planning the budget for the country, the growth is what I would focus on, because inflation is quite high, as you've rightly said. The current administration was quick to enact some reforms, fuel subsidy removal, and immediate devaluation of the naira, creating, a bit more access, a bit more access to dollar liquidity. There was a cap on withdrawals of dollar over the counter at the banks, but now banks, you can withdraw, I'm hearing, as high as 10,000 naira, which creates more liquidity. International rating agencies are quite, would I say, optimistic about the outlook with regard to Nigeria, on the sovereign risk. On the sovereign risk rating, they actually changed the outlook from negative to stable. So that's S&P's global rating. Fitch rating as well was also a B- with a stable outlook. So on the international, from an international standpoint, it looks good. It looks okay. But how best would you translate that to the man on the street, the woman on the street, the household that's struggling with the effect of the fuel subsidy removal that was swift and sudden? So the best way I would advise is, let's focus on growth. And with growth, the biggest driver of growth in any economy is a small and small SMEs, right? So SMEs, they can range from a company, maybe a pure water company that employs 20 people, to the small, someone that's packaging, crayfish to sell online. It could be a one-person business or 20-person business, or a big firm that's employing maybe 15,000 people. But a small and medium-scale enterprise needs to have the ability to do business with ease in the country. And the ease of doing business report that the World Bank would have, rated Nigeria, it doesn't rate the country so high. It doesn't promise, the ease of doing business. Like, is that, how easy is it for me to access credit if I'm a small and business case, small and medium scale enterprise? How easy is it for me to borrow money from the bank?
Even though I keep hearing, you have the World Bank say that we're doing good with regards to how we're able to swiftly remove fuel subsidy, and then even the harmonization of the dollar.
Yes.
So are you saying that it's neither here nor there?
I would say that there are merits
Okay.
to it. The free floating exchange rates that we're operating now is something that it's expected to inspire confidence in investors, create more liquidity and not just restrict the flow, just let the currency do its thing. But on the other hand, I think that the government would have to look at it from the citizen's point of view, is that if international financial bodies are saying, well done, the credit ratings, and saying you are on a good track, this is the way to go forward and do it, we need to understand that the removal of fuel subsidy is for a long time what every Nigerian, every adult Nigerian has known as part of the daily way of doing things. We know that fuel, it might go up a few points in there, but it wasn't as swift as sudden. So it's just like you're used to walking maybe with a walking stick and leaning on it, and then all of a sudden that's taken away from you without you being given the time to actually stand on your own 2 feet. So there's a lot of people that, a lot of citizens and households that are struggling very hard with coping and, daily adjustments and stuff. I was speaking with someone yesterday, and he was saying that to fuel his car, he lives in the Nasarawa axis that shares border with Nigeria, with Abuja, which is the Maraba, Masaka axis. So to fuel his car to come to work used to be 7,000, but now it's 28,000. So that's, you see, a 400% increase, and that's not counting other food costs. CPI is up by 2.9%. These are things that affect people on the street, people in their houses. So there's a connect that needs to happen, in which we translate macroeconomic indicators into the delivery of daily living, daily sustainability living and well-being of the citizens. And I think that should be the focus that every Nigerian, whether they're in government or otherwise, private or public sector, should be focusing on, that the private sector needs to be encouraged or stimulated to actually rise. Now, we have the service sector, we have the manufacturing sector. For manufacturing has the ability to absorb more of the unemployment rate. At this point, it's KPMG's rating it as over 40%, which is quite high for a country that has over 100 million able-bodies, employable youths. Most of them, yes, are low-skilled labor, I concede that, but they're people that are willing to work, but they don't see the availability, or there are no industries to quickly absorb them. But the service industry, tourism, horticulture, transport, logistics, entertainment, we can see that these industries, they don't require a lot of capital as manufacturing and extractive industries would, but they're absorbing a lot of the unemployed youths mostly, and it's risen from over 17% to now 29% absorption of the unemployment rate that we see right now. And a restive youth population is a population that's quite a great advantage, but at the same time it can go quick, can go downhill quick like that, as we're seeing. And there's a lot of people say insecurity and stuff, and most of it is the restiveness. People need to engage in something. If you give young people the enabling environment to get things done, they will get things done. And I point to the example of the entertainment industry. In other countries, you know, there's government subsidies, investments from the government and public sector into entertainment and, you know, movies, music, social media influencing. But in the country, Nigeria, most people are pulling themselves up by their bootstraps, and they've done that largely without the intervention of the government. But we have to lay the basics down that the cost of doing business is quite high. If you're a small and medium scale enterprise, your main cost of business is power. So if 50% of what you're using, of your capital, is power, and the government finds a way to bridge that gap and reduce it even from a 50% to a minimal 35, we're not even saying take it all away at the same time, you would see a boost, a jump in GDP growth, because growth drives the economy. So I would, if we're budget planning and all of that, I would focus, if I were in that position, if I were to advise, I would say let's focus on reducing access to credit. Let's not be too expensive to loan money from the banks. Let's not, I know they have microcredit financing and other companies that are coming up now with fintech companies that lend money. How easy is it? What's the payback rate of loans? How many hoops do I have to jump over? How many companies or agencies do I have to pay levies to? Do I have to pay APB? Do I have to pay municipal taxes? Do I have to pay all of those things? AMAC as well. Of course, we've already talked about power costs. So if you make the ease of doing business, if you make the business easy to do for small, and I'm not just talking about the big corporations now, because overall they can to a large extent absorb you know, most of this cost. It doesn't mean that it's easy for them too as well, because we know GSK just upped and left the country, which you know, it's not a good place to actually look at it from. But also the small person doing something on the streets, if someone is having an online store, how easy is it for the person to get, say, a dollar card to pay website fees? How easy is it for the person to set up an e-commerce system? How easy is it? So we should look as government agencies and also a public sector, because there need to be private-public sector partnership of making jobs, making business easy for the small company, for the medium company, because they would drive the economy and they would absorb most of the unemployed persons, which of course will lower insecurity, both, and also increase investor confidence, because if people see that, oh, there's a lot of, you know, domestic growth and stuff, you don't yes, they will build it and they will come. So you water the grass, make it green, and then they will come. So that's what I would focus on. All
right, you've actually said quite a number of things that we can unbundle, but before we go on, now I hear you say, talk about the fuel subsidy was some of the policies that the government reeled out was quick.
Yes, it
so
was.
are you actually saying that, even though we've been talking about fuel subsidy removal for decades, are you saying that this one was just way too swift? That's one on the side. Two questions, and I'd like you to unbundle them in one breath. Now, that's one on the side. And then secondly, we saw the report this morning saying that our daily consumption of fuel has dropped to 52 million liters.
Yes.
So is it like you talked about your friend who used to buy fuel for 7,000 and now 28,000?
Yes.
Is that the reason for that drop? And how much will it affect or impact anything at all?
Okay. This is actually very good and follow up to the 7,000 versus the 28,000. There's actually, will I say an upside if I would, but I think he would be the judge of that, because he said, I spend less time in traffic now because half of the cars are parked at home. So that alludes to what you're talking about, that there's a low consumption rate now and people are trying to do what they can to get by and still come to work. A lot of that is people not being able to use their cars as much as they used to. Other people are not carpooling to work. Okay, you go with your neighbor, I go with my colleague. You know, they're now, instead of just one person or one family driving in a car empty to work, you now have to put people in the car because you want to get 2,000 naira here, 5,000 naira there to augment your own fuel costs as well. So we see that has cut down on one side, and it's both of it. Okay. On one side, it has cut down consumption, which from a green economy part, and we are very pro-green. Nigeria is one of the signatories to the COP26. We're very much part of the Paris Agreement, and then there's all countries are pushing for a transition from traditional fossil fuels to the green economy. So from a green economy point of view, that seems nice. I think the environment would be happy. Like, okay, if I'm getting how do we measure smoke now? Cubic meters of maybe if I'm getting 3 million cubic meters of toxic smoke from the Abuja populace, now I'm getting 1.5. I would be sure if I were air, I would be happy. I would be jumping up and down. But then again, I always say we have to translate the macroeconomic indicators to ease and well-being. Like I personally, if my philosophy of economics is not, Friedman or is it classic economics or so, it's well-being economics. I believe that if the rules or the economics or the ways, the policies are not translating finally to well-being of people, it should be given a second look. It should be, recalibrated and thought about. Overall, this is what people are saying, that it would even out. People will get used to it, and then they will even out and stuff like that.
Nigerians just know how to survive. Though.
Yes, and that's a trait that we have that's admirable, but I wouldn't push it that far. I wouldn't push it that far. I would say, since now we're gaining points on not polluting the environment and using less carbon fuel and consumption is down, how about if we get bigger buses, more transit, a transit system in which we have people, instead of one car, we have one bus taking 200 people to and fro work.
And you recall we used to have that, especially in Abuja, where some ministries had those buses.
Yes. So I would advocate that is something that we consider, and not just in Abuja, because sometimes the idea and the focus can be that narrow and glaucomic, in which we're looking only at Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. The 36 states over there, including the FCT, and when we were buying fuel here at 630, people are buying fuel at 900. 900. And it's not as if their minimum wage or their income, it's that most of them are civil service states. So then how is it that they're buying petrol more expensive than in Abuja when, per capita income is quite higher? So I would say if we are deploying solutions to ease the effect of the sudden removal, and it is sudden, and that's coming to your second question. It was sudden. We talked about it for years, and I would like to, let's say it's a household, right? So maybe daddy or mommy has been saying for a long time, I'm going to remove you from this expensive school, you're going to go to, this community school nearby because we can't afford it anymore. I may be saying it for 10 years, but it doesn't matter whether it was gradual or sudden. The moment you move that child from one, in this example now, from you relocate them from what they're used to what they're not used to, there will be that moment of adjustment. And it was sudden, and the subsidy was complete, it was sudden, it was clean. Analysts are saying that it's just like a band-aid. You have to just rip it off. Or like when you're setting a bone, the patient will scream or whatever, but it has to be done. And I don't think I fall on, I think that personally, I would say yes if I have the luxury of being distant from people. But both my job and my daily work duties, and also the way that I structure things are in my life, I have direct contact with persons, both on the HR level and administrative level. You cannot but see people struggling. And so when you listen to the news, you get the World Bank estimates you are doing well and stuff, and then you turn around and there's somebody in your church, there's somebody in the mosque, or there's just your neighbor that is struggling to feed 4 children and has to come to you in spite. And this is somebody that maybe is a very proud person, and this person is hardworking. But for the person to actually say, I need help, then that even though we're doing well, supposedly on the macroeconomic scale, that more needs to be done. So that more needs to be done. That's my take.
All right, now, so also you talked about, I hear you talk about that we need to reduce our loans and all.
Yes.
But then I recall recently the NNPC boss went to get some loan from Afrexim Bank.
Yes.
That's 3 billion naira to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy. And then some people hit immediately and was asking, what is the NNP, how has that got to do anything to do with the NNPC boss? So if we still have this kind of loans, how much would that even affect anything? And then that's one on the side. And then secondly, you have the CBN also bringing back some of the BDCs that were removed by the formal administration. And then the BDC operators come out to say that that's not even going to do anything. We still have over 800 naira for $1. The naira to the dollar. So how much will all of this, I hear people, some of them say that it is just some policy somersault and then inconsistencies. Do you agree with that thought?
I think that there's a lot of inconsistency that should be expected. And I would just go with management expectation. We need to manage expectations as policy makers, as stakeholders, government, of course, and of course the public and the private sector. There needs to be something called management of expectations, in which there will be change of policy if there is a change of government. That is why you go to elections. That's why you have the ballot box. If not, you would be happy with a dictatorship. So you want change, and most times it's going to be sudden. There is the former CBN governor might have said these are the rationale for suspension of like BDC operators because they were artificially creating scarcity, and then now we have the loan and the NNPC boss doing that. Now the BDC guys, you have the ban and the cap on them, but now you are removing that, and then now you're taking loans or you're not taking loans. People do things from the standpoint of their understanding. But there's something called best practice. So best practice is what are my colleagues in other similar situations or similar countries or similar portfolios doing, and how has that worked out for them? I concede that the Nigerian situation is slightly different and slightly unique in its own sense, and Nigeria is not what other countries are. Some of them are mono-religious. Some of them are not so polyethnic as we are. Some of them are not so driven by tribe and religion as we are. And some of them don't have the federal structure that we have. So you
have to put all of this into consideration, right?
It's what I'm saying, that you cannot just copy and paste from another country or another state of affairs, or even from a policy report. You have to then think and ask, what are the technocrats saying? And that's why, for me personally, I love numbers. Numbers will not lie. They used to say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and a picture doesn't lie, but the picture met social media and the picture start lying now. But the issue now is numbers don't lie. If, for instance, I'm saying that we need a loan of this amount of money to run this, there are statistical methods that we can use, a mathematical method that we can use to predict the effect of this decision I'm about to take. This is how capital markets and hedge funds, predict and invest their investors' money. If they didn't have some form of, they don't have a crystal ball, you know, into what tomorrow would be and what the markets will be, because political tensions, all of these things affect what would happen to the capital markets. But if you're a hedge fund manager, you say, okay, you say to investors, give me your money. So they give you 10, 20 billion naira or $20 billion as the case may be. And I promise you a so and so percentage of refund. The reason I'm doing that is because I have statisticians. You know, I have data analysts, I have AI, I have things in which I have crunched the numbers, and the numbers have run ahead and they've told me at this point in time with these and these and these parameters, this is what might likely, there's a 90% chance of it happening, there's a leak likelihood of it happening, and these are the risks, and this is how you will manage the risk. Are we doing that? That's what I'm saying, that are we doing that? If all of this is on ground, you as a stakeholder, you as a person in government, or as a, you know, the head of a parastatal could say, we have run the analysis, we have done our duty, and we've done our due diligence, and we see, based on best practice, based on what the numbers are telling us, that we can do this, and we expect this result with this level of likelihood of success and this level of risk management.
All right, we're actually due for a break, but before we go on that break now, let's talk about the fact that a few days ago you have the presidential spokesperson came out to say that fuel price is not going to go up. And then we're still at 600, and then we're still looking at probably it could go up to 700. Even I hear Ipman say that it will not go up. I hear other people say wait for 700 and even 1,000. But then in all of this, even also a few days ago I saw that oil prices has gone up in the global market.
Yes.
So how would Nigerians now tell you that oil price, don't worry, just we'll stay at this 600 naira per liter? Are we really deceiving ourselves or here?
I think that there's a part of there's a Nigerianness to some of the information that will be passed out as concrete fact or evidence in which you would base financing or budgeting investment decisions. There's a part of us that's eternally hopeful, the perennial optimist. We know it will get better. You know, it's just like when you tell someone that, oh, the cost of raising a child to university level is, let's say, 3 million naira. So since you are earning 150,000 naira, we've crushed the numbers that you should have only 3 children. The typical Nigerian say, God will provide.
Exactly.
So if God bless me with children, am I now going to say,
tell God
no? That's what we will say, and say they will find something to eat. So if we translate that and extrapolate that to, you know, to things like energy and food prices, there is that part of us that it will just color, it will just pick into, and then we just be like, no, don't worry, we're not increasing, we're not this. But you're dealing with international actors and factors in which what happens in Ukraine affects you. And it's no longer indirectly, oh, it affects you indirectly, or what happens, oh, the world is a small village. It has become a small clan. You know, it's no longer a small village. The war in Ukraine happened before 2 weeks was over. Bread prices here had gone up. That's how what started in Wuhan became what has all over the world, everybody. There was a shutdown, there was lockdown across countries. The supply chains were affected, investment opportunities, people pulled out money, put it in somewhere else. Budgets of countries were revised, currencies shook because of a virus. And that's not something that happened, oh, it happened in Ghana, so that's why it's affecting us. No, it happened in faraway China. You need a 2-day flight to get there, but it was quick in getting here. So if on the international, and also to point out that Nigeria is part of OPEC, and then they're also, because we're oil producing, there are things that not necessarily would not be affecting other countries that are non-oil, their economy is non-oil based, as we are. So if energy prices, we as a country, as a people, if I were a speculator, an investor, or even a business owner, I would keep my eyes closed and fixed on the energy market, because that affects everything that we do. So in sense, food costs are also energy, because you eat food to get energy. So if something affects the energy side, it will affect us. I don't think it is fair, and I don't think it is accurate to say, don't worry, the fuel prices will not go up. because we have totally removed fuel subsidy. Unless we're getting back to actually fix it. That's how we know that fuel prices, because there's a fixed, and we've subsidized it at this level, and we're controlling. And there's a limit to how government should interfere with market forces. You know, so if we get to that point, then that we're saying it will not, because the government has fixed it, I think it's unrealistic for us to say that.
Clearly, there's so much to unbundle from this conversation with Kutu Ameji, and we will definitely unbundle them after this time out. Join us again.
Some people in Lagos were telling me, oh, I bought 10,000 naira for 15,000. That
even more.
Sentence, I bought 10,000 naira for 15,000 naira. It should be in history books. It should be in economics textbooks. It should be explained. It should be something that you would write a thesis on. I bought 15,000. I bought 10,000 naira for 15,000 naira. What is that? You know, but that's something that we lived through, and that's something that it's a model. If I were an economist studying world currencies and central bank policies, I would, of a note, put Nigeria and say, okay, you know what, let's study this, because it's notable.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you've actually missed out on a whole lot, but then you can still join in the conversation. So our guest on the show today is Kutu Ameji, who is a financial and administration expert. All right, before we went on that break, we've actually talked about quite a number of things. Yes, but now, looking at, based on your work experience on fiscal control and budgeting and all, now we've seen how much companies, state governments are trying to cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy. Some say don't come to work the 5 days in a week, come to work 3 days or 2 days, as the case may be. And then some say, okay, we'll just increase your salary. We've seen like from 30% to 100% increase in some people's salaries. So how effective is that? And that's one on the side. And then secondly, for companies who just keep saying that our cash flow is not moving anywhere, it's just stagnant. So how would you advise such companies to at least help their employees? Let me borrow President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's word. How would you advise them to help their employees to breathe, their poor employees to breathe? I'm going to ask you two questions, and I'd like you to unbundle it. That's one on the side.
Yes.
Now, secondly is, if we're talking about the new ministry, now we have new ministers on board. And then some people will say, well, we're still waiting for the OPS, that's the organized private sector, still waiting for the ministry of the petroleum minister, saying that, okay, so why do you have, last administration, the former president was the minister of petroleum, and now still you have same. And then I hear someone say, why do we always, does it actually look like we always do the wrong thing here in this part of the country? Do you agree to that?
I'll start with the cash flow question. So if you have employees, and of course everyone's feeling the brunt of the fuel subsidy removal and the devaluation of the naira, we have to factor that in as well, because that affected a lot of things. Two things. Again, my favorite phase is management of expectations. From the employee's point of view, you expect, and it is legitimate to expect, because you expect that your employer will increase a salary or find a way to make your life easy by maybe don't come to work 5 times, maybe you come 3 times, you work from home 2 days of the week, or we rotate shifts now, or we carpool. Okay, the people that live in this area, we're going to get a bus for them to reduce their transportation and stuff. You expect that there's something that your employer would do to cushion the blow of it. And it is a legitimate expectation, because most private companies have employment contracts in which the employee is forbidden from carrying out additional or finding additional work outside. You can't have something doing at the same time, in which, because it takes away from your work. Whatever you do on the weekend, that's if I'm using an example of an enterprise that doesn't have people working the weekends. So whatever you do on the weekend, on your free time, that's up to you. But while you're here on my premises at my business, I have your attention 100%, and you put that in a contract. Now, from a HR point of view, it is an enforceable contract in which if the employee violates that, that person, you can take that person to court. Is enforceable. Now, the flip side to that is that your employee now depends on you 100% for their livelihood. They depend on you 100%. So if there is a change in economic indicators, as we've seen, and they're struggling, if you don't provide some form of succor or some form of support, you will have disgruntled employees on your hands. From now the employer's point of view, you should expect that an employee that is struggling to put food on the table, struggling to with food and energy costs, will not be a happy, motivated employee he or she was prior to all of these changes by the government. So if people don't come to work on time, you need to find out if it's because they're just being deliberately truants, or they're genuinely struggling to actually come to work on time. You need to expect that people want to leave on time to avoid traffic. You need to expect that they might not be putting their 100% into your job or your business because they're looking for additional work or additional sources of income somewhere. Now, how do you do what you can to help the poor breathe or let your poor employees better accommodate all the changes that has happened? You can call for a salary review. Okay. And you can let the staff know that you're doing a salary review. And
but what if you have companies who are complaining that they don't have any ink, there's no ink, nothing is coming in?
Yes.
So why do I have to review the salary?
A salary review does not ultimately culminate in a salary upgrade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when you call a salary review, the staff, first of all, it boasts the confidence of the staff, because there are intangible ways of keeping the workforce, and one of it is to show that you care. And if it's like, oh, they've increased the fuel subsidy, I'm not your government, it's none of my business.
After all, you are the one that voted.
After all, you are the one that voted. When it was time for people to go and vote, you were sitting at home. Now, when it's time to look for money, you want me to take out of my pocket and give to you. And let's be fair to the employer. The employee doesn't have to bear operational costs. The employer based the budget, let's say, on 600 naira per liter of diesel. Now, diesel is off charts. The employer based, when they were budget planning, maybe cleaning supplies, office stationery at this level. This was their budgetary benchmark. They put it as, let's say, 400 naira to 497 naira to the USD. Now it's 695. So who's going to bear that difference, that variance? That falls to the employer. The employer has to struggle. The employer has family as well. The employer has school fees to pay. The employer has rent to pay, rent of property, has levies to pay, has tariffs to pay to the government. You're the employee. And I know that people are struggling, but the employer is struggling even much more. At least with the employee, you can come and say, let them look at how they can help us. Who's going to help the employer? Who does the employer go to be like, I need a salary review, I need a capital budgetary? They go to the banks. And if your collateral, if your papers aren't complete, if you don't jump through all the hoops, you're not getting additional capital. Funding is important for the lifespan of a business. And so if the business costs, operational costs have gone up, and the employer has nowhere else to turn to, then not only are they zero cash flow, they go into a negative cash flow cycle, and they will be struggling to put themselves out of water. Now, having looked at both sides, still call for a salary review. Let the staff know that you're doing something to actually, we're concerned. We have a zero cash flow issue, and it might even be negative, but we want to look at the salary. Why do we want to look at this? Or maybe not call it salary, you can call it a payroll review. A payroll or remuneration review is mostly, it contains your net salary, it contains maybe your health insurance, it contains maybe your NHF plan, it contains all of these things. Maybe there's a way in which you can, let's say for health insurance, for instance, maybe the existing health insurance you have for your staff, maybe they're benefits that the health insurance provider, the HMO, has not been providing. Maybe you can call the HMO in and ask them to make sure that they provide these services. Why is that important? Because a lot of the costs that your employees will bear are health costs for their families. And to be fair to anyone, if your wife is sick or your child is sick, you're not coming to crunch numbers in the office. You're not running the errands. You're not in the meeting. You're not there. You are at home when people are. So if, let's say you have an existing health insurance scheme, and all this while, maybe the HR person is like, yes, it's working fine, what, we just have a few glitches. Call for a remuneration package review. Once it's okay, you know what, you as business owner, let me see that health insurance we are planning for. What are the add-on values there? Can our people go to a gym? Does it mean that, okay, they can have a general checkup? What are the other extra benefits that we have been paying for, but we've not been enforcing? You enforce that now, and all of a sudden, if you have 20 staff, 15 of them now have better health care for their families without you even paying anything additional. So there needs to be, and make them aware. Of course, manage expectations, but make people aware that this is what we're doing. We don't have physical money to do this for you now, but this is what we can do. Or you can call again with the health insurance, because I focus on health because health is very important to employees. Apart from the people can stay at a job that pays very bad, but with great health insurance, because they're they're aware that if they go to a hospital that they can't afford the hospital that their employer paid for. But on the health insurance plan, they can. And they have access to hospitals across the nation. So even if they travel home for Christmas and their child is sick, they can go there. A package that, you know, money, like salary, you cannot pay that out of your pocket. So call the HMO, tell them that these and these packages, from my review of my staff, nobody has been using the gym. We would like to convert our gym benefits for a health, for a crutch service. We need a crutch service that's close to our business for all the women, especially if you have women on your team, for all the nursing mothers or even the male staff that have young children, that they can stay after school or they can take care of them, and they don't have to then pay 60,000 out of pocket to a crutch anymore from their own salary, because now the company has swapped the gym. And you call the staff and say, okay, this is what we've noticed, this is what we are doing. There's no cash flow at the moment. This is what we can do. This service, nobody is using it. Out of maybe 15 employees, only 2 people that are using it. So we want to swap this part of our healthcare package and make it a crutch instead. So you bring your children from home, you keep them here, you can close at 4. When you are going, you take them and they take care of them. And so you don't have to pay crutch anymore. Imagine the joy is when you come home and tell your wife. And then it's a win-win situation. It's a win-win situation, actually. So the 60,000 that we used to pay, at least now, that one, you've pocketed it. You can buy more food or baby formula or add it to rent or whatever. And then I know this is outside this, for me, people have said to me that this is outside the scope of small business, because I have friends and family that run small business, that this is not something that they would encourage. But I would just throw it out there. There are cooperative societies that can come up on a job. There are people that on their own have only 20,000 naira to save, you know, let's say per month out of their salary. And how will I save? What to do 20,000 do? On your own, you can do nothing, right? But then by the time you have 10, 15 employees, okay, we have 20,000, that's 200,000. What can we do? Let's invest in something. So then let's say you invest in food, because food prices are always going up. So you buy bags of rice, and then let's say in 3-4 months, you sell that, and everybody is on that 20,000, you get an additional 20,000. That's money that no bank will give you. No bank will give you that for any reason. And then all of a sudden, if you do that now, by Christmas, you don't have to worry about what the kids are eating for Christmas, what all of those things. So all of that money that you would have spent at Christmas to give them at least a reasonable Christmas business, you get that because you and your staff or your employees have decided, let's run a cooperative thing, put money together, and then find a source of income that we can do that's independent of the cash flow that customers. So we don't have the time, but I can just list 5 more ways in which, with zero cash flow on the premises of your business, you can find a way to make the employee's job easier.
You can just quickly give us 2 of them again.
Pardon?
Or just give us another 2 again.
Another 2. Okay. So one is cooperative, the other one is a health insurance thing. Another one that you could do is where the bank, where if you have employees that are all with a bank and their salary accounts are with a bank, you know, and they're there 10, 15 years, they have a certain customer confidence that the bank would be able to extend to them a certain kind of loan. Or if you've contributed to their National Housing Fund for a certain level, you as an employer can call the company in and say, okay, we've been contributing to this, and this. Our housing fund, let me take the housing fund for instance. We've been contributing and remitting to the housing fund. This is how much my employees have. What can you do for us with regard to getting the property for them to buy, or for some kind of real estate allocation that they can do? Because the thing is that the federal mortgage banks and all of these things, real estate, because Abuja real estate is very big and stuff like that. But most people don't take advantage of what's available. You just have your employee or employer just remitting to the NHF fund. Have you gone there to ask questions? And so as an employer, you can actually ask the questions. You can, maybe not with the knowledge of the staff, but you can call them and say, what are the benefits that accrue? Okay, maybe their baseline to qualify for a housing loan is small, but what can they get? Can they get a shop? Can they get a shop which they'll 2 or 3 persons can co-own, and then what can they get? So if you have a steady employment and you are an employer that you're complying with the labor rules, and okay, you should remit this and remit that, there are a lot of options that you can explore. Not all of them will pan out as accurately as they should. We know that the people can use their pensions now, to their contributory pensions now, to access the mortgage and be able to see it and use that to pay. Have you called the pension company in? Have you asked them, okay, I want, what have you been? So if you do a payroll or a remuneration review, and with management of expectation that necessarily we're not increasing your salary, we are just going to see how we can make things easier for you and make it better for you.
And at least that way the company can either swim or float, and instead of sinking.
And then the company can then be left to focus on getting cash flow in, not that the cash flow is necessarily that we're pumping that into money that you don't have into other areas.
All right, now let's move a little bit and then discuss other matters with regards to the dramatic turn of events during the cashless or the cash redesign.
You mean prior to the elections?
Yeah, prior to the elections.
Was coconuts.
Okay. So I actually saw an article that you wrote, and we're going to talk about it.
Yes.
You made a post, and you said, and quote,
yeah,
even though at the time of this piece, old notes have been restored to the economy following a court order, the aftermath still remain. The eerie realization that paper money, fiat money, is itself a commodity. Nigeria's experiment to forcefully implement a cashless economy has shown that money, in addition to being a store of value, a unit of account, and the means of payment, is at its core a commodity. That's what you said.
Yes.
And according to the dictionary, defines core commodity, and quote, says it's a good or service that is widely available throughout the world, so that a substantial number of countries in each region can provide prices for these items. So I'll ask again, is Naira still a core commodity?
Well, not specifically Naira. We're going to broaden that to fiat currency. And fiat currency is what we have as paper notes. The history of money, if you go through, money has always been a commodity, in which in past times we have things like salt being used as a means of exchange, which is by definition what money is, and a store of value. We've had cowries. We've had bronze pellets being used as means of payment. Now, at this time in human history, we're dealing with paper currency. So it's easier to carry than, say, gold. It's easier to carry than silver. And you have a store of value in which you have portability, you have ease of payment. And of course, when you speak now of the digital fiat currency, I can use my phone now and buy things. I don't have to carry 50,000 naira on my person and then carry a big purse. But if you can trade it, it's a commodity by that definition. So you have, during that no cash, you would have someone say, I want 10,000 naira cash from a POS operator, and the person says that's going to cost you 12,000 naira. I'm buying my own money. I'm buying money now. I'm not buying chair. I'm not buying, water to drink. I'm not buying this dress. I'm buying money. So money is buying money in a weird way of, like a dog eating its tail. Why is money buying money if money is not commodity? So from that standpoint then, if money can buy money, I have people that said, I'm not buying money. It is unthinkable on the face of it that I would buy. I'm not buying money. I'm not doing whatever that they're doing. I'm not doing. I'm going to be using my electronic thing until this madness is over. And well, we can call it madness at the time, but it drove a lot of digital payments. 100% of everything then was digital. People literally couldn't access 10 naira, 20 naira without, and when they physically actually started getting money, it was not that you would pay 2,000 naira to get 10,000 naira. Essentially, you'll be giving someone 12,000 to get 10,000. And then all across the, if some people in Lagos were telling me, oh, I bought 10,000 naira for 15,000. That
even more.
Sentence, I bought 10,000 naira for 15,000 naira. It should be in history books. It should be in economics textbooks. It should be explained. It should be something that you would write a thesis on. I bought 15,000, I bought 10,000 naira for 15,000 naira. What is that? But that's something that we lived through, and that's something that it's a model. If I were an economist studying world currencies and central bank policies, I would, of a note, put Nigeria and say, okay, you know what, let's study this because it's notable.
All right. Our time is fast spent, but then let's see how we can actually manage the next, if you can help us in the next 3 minutes.
Sure.
And then, so now let's divert a little bit and then talk about this Japa mad. Okay, let me not use the word from my mouth. Let's talk about this Japa bandwagon.
Okay.
And now you have people thinking that they just want to go to the places where the grass is green on the other side. So now, in that regard, 2 questions. I'd like you to unbundle them in one breath. Now, one is Christmas is coming, and people are looking for where they can have their vacation or their staycation.
Yeah.
So why not Nigeria though? But if I decide I don't want to do Nigeria, I want to go probably somewhere in Europe, where would you advise? That's one on the side. And then secondly, if I'm coming in because I want to take my family away from Nigeria, with all that I have, with the other person from the other side, probably the HR from the other side, with all the information that you've heard and you've read about Nigeria, and probably you just finished seeing a video where Tiamiu, MD Tiamiu talked about the reason why Nigerians are jackpotting. So why would I want to employ you as an employee in my organization, even being a Nigerian? Why would you hire a Nigerian?
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't? It's the best hire you would ever have in a long time. And of course, I'm biased. I'm Nigerian, so my mother's soup is always sweetest. Like I say, nobody's soup is sweeter than your mother, even though she's a bad cook. I concede that there are a lot of things that need work, as far as the Nigerian experience is concerned, and Nigerian reputation on the international scene. But let me tell you, there is no more dedicated employee, no more loyal employee, no more creative employee than a Nigerian. I'll start with the first question about where you would want to vacation and staycation in Europe. That would be up to your pocket.
Okay.
That would also be up to your preference. What is a staycation about? Is it something you want to go hiking? Is that something you want to go skydiving, for instance? You are a thrill seeker, or you have the kids and you want to go somewhere more quieter and stuff like that. There are a lot of destinations in Europe. There's I know a friend of mine that's 3 of them have gone to the UK. A lot more have gone to Ireland. Okay. People travel also. I don't see a lot of Nigerians going to Canada because of the cold, and because when you're used to a warmer climate, you want to go somewhere. But Christmas is usually during winter. It's usually during the cold. So you would want to go to somewhere that has more snow if you're looking for a white Christmas, which of course some countries in Europe don't experience snow, or some parts of even the United States don't experience snow as much. So it would depend on what your staycation or your vacation needs or preferences are. Okay. That's not something that I necessarily would want to speak on, because that's apart from the conversation. about hiring a Nigerian, there's a lot to be said for one person spoiling the work for the rest of us, or the rest of the hard work. Nigerians are hardworking. Nigerians are the ones that would look for 3-4 ways in why something is not working. Why? Because we come from a country and we come from a culture where failure is not an option. You are resilient. If one doesn't work, two works. A typical Nigerian has 2 or 3 phones. If one phone doesn't work, the other would work. If you have a phone, you have a charger,
ATMs.
you have 3 ATMs, you have 3 internet networks, you have different things. If this doesn't work, that they will find an option. It must work. There is no option in which something would not work. So that's why you want a Nigerian on your team, because the way the world is now, you're not competing on a local scene, even though you are an international company. You are competing with someone in Ireland, you're competing with someone in China, you're competing with someone across the globe. So you have colleagues that you will never meet and you may never meet, and they're beating you at the game. You need someone on your team that can roll with the punches. If there's no power, that's fine, let's look for alternative power. There's no source of credit, okay, let's look for an alternative credit. There's no way, these are the regulatory bodies and the new rules don't affect us negatively. Let's look for another way around it.
That's without even cutting corners.
Without cutting corners. Let's look for another way. Is there another way? You need someone thinking outside the box. You need someone taking the box away, constructing another box, creating a different paradigm shift. And that's a Nigerian. Also, because we have a culture of you're either a doctor, a lawyer, or a disgrace or something. You're not. So you have the cultural push and a home and strong family dynamic in which you have people at home you're thinking about. You have your family name. I can't disappoint my mom. I can't disappoint my dad, my people, my village people. And then you also have the larger than life spirit, in which I call being opulently Nigerian. The opulent Nigerian spirit is a spirit of flamboyancy. It's in the way the weddings are, is in the way even someone that cannot afford it finds a way to flamboyantly express themselves. And I'll give you a final point for us to close. Growing up, and I've spoken to many people, and this was their experience as well. You know, when you're cleaning outside the house, and your mom says, take this broom outside and sweep, they're on the sand, because now, okay, everywhere is interlocks or stuff. But growing up, you had like a sand around outside the house in which children played in. You would use that broom and create like a pattern, a beautiful pattern. So even in that quiet, gentle way, there was a flamboyance about it. And that comes from the history of the Nigerian people. Of course, before we were amalgamated into a country, is that we each come from a tribe that has kings, which means that we come from a long lineage of kings makers, and then king servers, which means that we as communities revolved around kingdoms. So protocol, dressing, names, titles, how we carry ourselves, everything came from the sense that we belonged to a kingdom, or we are from a kingdom or something. If you have that sense and you translate that over time into the new generation now, people have a kingly mentality. They have a sense of purpose, a sense of, I'm going somewhere to happen, I'm doing, and nothing can stop me. And we have to know that the Nigerian, I think they're about, if I'm getting my facts correct, about 1 billion of the African race, all scattered around the world. Nigeria being 200 million, is 1.5, is 5%, is a fifth of the black race. So if we succeed, the rest
black race
will succeed. Yes.
Oh, wow. What a fine way to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Kutu Ameji. It's been a wonderful time having this discussion. Thank you
for having me here. I'm again very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. Don't you just love being a Nigerian? Like she said, the opulent Nigerian. I would just recall when our parents would tell us, remember the son or the daughter of who you are. That word will always resonate. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure you must have been rightly educated, entertained, and informed as we have been chatting with Kutu Ameji, who is a financial and administration expert. It's been a wonderful time here on The Conversation. I will see you next time. Keep watching The Conversation, because you never know who my next guest will be and what my next topic will be all about. Till I come your way again from the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabelle Oji. Again, God bless you and yours. God bless Nigeria.